Hey guys, tonight we're stepping straight into the Middle Ages where your life is about to change forever. Imagine this, you are no longer just a farmer's child in some quiet, muddy village. You are on the edge of becoming a page, an apprentice to a knight about to be swallowed whole by the cold stone walls of a castle. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this if you were truly dropped into the 15th century. But for tonight's story, we'll let you. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening right now, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, because I always find it fascinating to see how this sleepy little history family stretches across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie awake in the dark before dawn in your family's thatched roof hut, your straw mattress itchy under your cheek. Your little brother snores softly beside you, oblivious to the enormity of the day. Today, everything changes. Your mother's gentle hand shakes you awake, and the smell of smoke and bread fills the air. She presses a small loaf into your hands, fresh from the hearth, warm against your palms, as though she could pour all her love into that bread and send it with you. Your father enters boots, already laced his weathered face, solemn. He doesn't waste words. He kneels, gripping your shoulders, his eyes steady, his voice deep and steady as he says only, "Remember who you are." It is not a lecture, it's a command, a blessing, and a farewell, all in one. When the horse arrives with the steward from the castle, your younger siblings come tumbling outside, still barefoot, still rubbing sleep from their eyes. Your sister clings to your tunic, whispering, "Don't go," but everyone knows you must. You are lifted onto the saddle, and your family recedes behind you, their faces blurred by distance and tears, until your father is nothing more than a dark figure at the edge of the field, standing straight, unmoving until you can't see him anymore. The journey is long and strange. The rider with you says little, his chainmail rattling faintly with the horse's movement. You pass streams where you once played, fields you once ran through barefoot, all now fading behind you. You pass merchants with carts and pilgrims trudging along the muddy road. At one point, a group of soldiers passes, their armor gleaming in the rising sun. One of them laughs when he sees you gawking, calling out, "Soon enough, boy," and you don't know whether to be proud or terrified. The road grows rougher, forests close in, and the world feels bigger and more dangerous with every step. Hours blur into aching legs and gnawing hunger, and just as you think you can't go any further, it appears on the horizon, the castle. It is not just a building, it is a mountain of gray stone, rising like a giant's fist against the sky. Towers crowned with banners whip red and gold in the wind. A drawbridge stretches across a moat that looks black and endless. Your breath catches as you stare, because nothing in your small village life prepared you for this vision. And as you ride closer, it becomes alive. Guards pacing the battlements with crossbows, chickens scattering under carts, sparks leaping from a blacksmith's hammer, dogs barking, women balancing baskets, children running barefoot. The smell of hay and manure and smoke hits you all at once. You slide down from the horse legs trembling, and the stone of the courtyard feels cold and alien beneath your boots. This is your new home. You are led into the great hall, and the world tilts again. The ceiling rises so high it feels like a forest of beams. Huge tapestries hang on the walls, showing saints with calm eyes and battles where knights clash in crimson and gold. A hearth big enough to roast an ox roars at the center light, flickering across stone and fir, and at the far end sits the Lord Mantle, trimmed with fur sword, gleaming at his side eyes, weighing you like a hawk weighing prey. Beside him sits the lady serene, her gown flowing like liquid light. They do not smile, but when the steward announces your name, the Lord nods once. That single gesture locks your fate. An older boy with unruly hair pulls you along, introducing himself as Thomas. He takes you down narrow passages, the castle twisting and echoing like a labyrinth, until he shoves you into a chamber where straw mattresses line the floor. The smell of sweat and hay lingers. This one's yours, he says, smirking, and kicks a lumpy pallet in the corner. Don't snore too loud. Around you, other boys glance up, some grinning, some ignoring you. They are like you, sons of farmers, merchants, or minor knights, each one torn from home, each one pressed into this life of service. You crawl onto your straw mattress that night, stiff and alien compared to home, and stare at the beams overhead. You hear a boy nearby muffling quiet sobs, and though you don't cry, your chest aches, knowing you are not the only one. The first dawn comes harsh and cold. Bells clang before the sun even rises. Thomas kicks your foot up Greenling, your body aches, your eyes sting, but you scramble to your feet. The day begins with chores, carrying water from the well until your arms shake, sweeping rushes across stone floors, running errands through endless corridors. At breakfast, you stand silently behind benches, pouring ale for nights, watching their laughter and arguments, memorizing every gesture. In the stables, the air heavy with hay and dung, you are shoved toward a massive warhorse. Its nostrils flare, its hooves strike sparks. You force yourself to reach out trembling, and when your palm touches the warm flank, the sheer power under its skin surges through you. That night, exhausted, you whisper to Thomas, "One day I'll ride one of those." He only laughs in the dark, muttering, "If you live that long." Days blur into weeks. You spill trays, trip during bows, earn cuffs on the ear. But slowly victories emerge. Balancing a pitcher without spilling, remembering names, serving supper without trembling. Once a night ruffles your hair, murmuring, "Quick hands, lad." Another time, you sneak into the armory and run your fingers along a long sword, cold and gleaming. For one heartbeat, you see yourself in armor, hear the clash of steel taste glory. Then the armorer's shout sends you fleeing in panic. Seasons pass. Winter winds rattle shutters. Spring rains flood the courtyard. Summer sun bakes the walls. The castle becomes familiar, its sounds and smells etched into you. The loneliness softens into routine. Your back straightens, your bow deepens, your voice steadies. You are still just a boy, but not the same boy who left the straw bed of his village home. You are now a page caught between childhood and the dream of knighthood, already changed forever. The next morning strikes you like a hammer on steel. Bells toll before the sun even lifts above the horizon, and the chill inside the stone walls is sharper than any blade you've ever touched. You sit up in your straw pallet, the weight of yesterday still lingering on your chest, and for a moment you wonder if you dreamed it all. But then you hear the shuffle of boys pulling on rough tunics, the scuff of boots on cold flagstones, the mutter of prayers half mumbled in exhaustion. There's no dream here. This is your life now. Thomas slaps your shoulder hard enough to sting, grinning with that older boy arrogance. Don't lag behind, Greenling, or they'll have you cleaning dung with your bare hands. He's not joking. You rush to your feet, pulling on your clothes, barely awake, and stumble with the others down a corridor lit by torches still burning from the night watch. The air smells of damp stone smoke and bodies crammed together too long. The day begins in the kitchens, an inferno of noise and heat. Women shout over cauldrons of bubbling broth spits creak under the weight of roasting meat, and dogs slink underfoot hoping for scraps. You're handed a broom and ordered to sweep ashes into piles, then back to hauling buckets of water until your arms feel like they'll snap. It's relentless, but you catch glimpses of the knights at their breakfast armor, gleaming even in the dim hall light, laughter echoing like thunder. They sit at benches carved with years of scars, eating hunks of bread and meat as though they were kings. And though you are bone tired part of, you can't look away. You study their movements, how they grip a knife, how they toss words back and forth like spears, and you whisper to yourself one day. After the hall duties, you're shoved outside into the courtyard where the stables wait. The stench hits you first sweat hay and manure all mixed together into a single choking cloud. The master of horses, a broad shouldered man with a scar down his cheek, points at you with a pitchfork. You muck. That's it. Your hands blister as you drag shovels through filth, your back screaming sweat, stinging your eyes, even in the cold morning. War horses stamp nearby, their sheer size, overwhelming muscles shifting like coiled ropes under glistening coats. One of them turns snorting, and its eyes meet yours. For a heartbeat, you see not a beast, but a fellow warrior, one who will one day carry a knight into battle. The thought sends a thrill through you, even as the stench makes your stomach churn. By noon, your arms are trembling, your stomach growling. The midday meal is simple bread, hard enough to crack teeth, cheese salty enough to dry your throat, and Waterdale. You stand in the corner of the hall while knights eat their feast, serving when called invisible otherwise. When a knight waves his goblet at you, you hurry forward, filling it with trembling hands. He does not thank you, but his gaze lingers a moment appraising. That tiny glance feeds something deep inside you. The afternoon brings new humiliation. You're sent to the chapel where the priest drills boys like you on Latin prayers. His voice is dry and sharp, his cane sharper. Kyrie eleison Christe eleison, he barks. And when you stumble on a word, the cane cracks across the desk, making your heart jump. But as the chant rolls on the stone walls, echoing with the rhythm of voices, something seeps into you, a sense of weight of mystery. You don't understand half of it, but you feel it pressing down. God honor duty. These are not just words, they are the scaffolding of the life you're climbing into. Evening doesn't bring rest. You're pulled to the training yard where older squires clash with wooden swords, the sound of wood striking wood sharp and cruel. Sweat drips, curses fly, and laughter breaks through when one boy is knocked flat. You stand at the edge, clutching a practice sword, too long for your arms, too heavy for your wrists. The weapons master, a grizzled veteran with a limp, barks, swing page, swing or go back to the kitchens. You swing awkward, clumsy the wood, jarring your arms with each strike. The older boys snicker, but you grit your teeth, refusing to drop it. Each swing is a promise one day you'll be strong enough. One day you won't be the one laughed at. Night finally drags you back to the dormitory. Your body is broken, blistered, bruised. You collapse into your straw mattress, too tired even to remove your boots. Around you, other boys whisper complaints, dreams, laughter muffled into the dark. Someone cries softly, muffled under a blanket. You stare at the beams overhead. The smell of sweat and straw thicken your nose, and your mind drifts back to your family. You picture your mother's hands kneading bread, your father's voice telling you to remember who you are. For a long moment, your chest aches with longing so sharp it feels like a blade, but as sleep begins to claim you, the image shifts. You see yourself not in straw, but in steel, not a barefoot boy, but a knight astride a warhorse cloak, snapping in the wind, sword raised high. The image burns so bright it follows you into dreams, carrying you into sleep like a banner. And so ends your first full day as a knight's apprentice, pain, exhaustion, and humiliation woven together with a single thread of hope. You are at the bottom of a ladder, carved from stone and blood, but the climb has begun. The second day begins before the first light has even touched the sky. You're yanked awake not by the bells this time, but by Thomas, his hand shaking your shoulder with no trace of yesterday's playful grin. Up, he mutters sharply. Training day. They'll skin you if you're late. His voice is more serious now, and that alone jolts you upright. The air is colder than yesterday, and every muscle in your body screams in protest as you swing your legs out of the straw. Blisters on your hands have hardened into raw patches. You barely slept, but there is no room for weakness here. The dormitory stirs with boys rubbing sleep from their eyes, pulling tunics over their heads in silence. Today there is less chatter, less laughter. The word training hangs over you all like a looming shadow. You gulp down a crust of bread and watery ale, your stomach growling for more. But the horn in the courtyard cuts breakfast short. Outside, mist clings to the ground, wrapping the castle yard in a ghostly veil. The training field spreads before you, packed earth darkened with dew, wooden dummies lined up like silent soldiers, and racks of blunted practice swords leaning in neat rows. The weapons master waits there, leaning on his cane, his single good eye sharp as a hawk's. His limp does not make him weaker. If anything, it makes him more terrifying, as though the limp is just a scar from a war he survived when others did not. Line up, he roars, and boys scramble into formation. You stumble to your place at the end of the row, heart pounding in your chest. He paces before you like a predator, his gaze sweeping over each trembling page. You are not knights, he growls. Not yet. You are less than squires, less than stable boys. You are clay waiting to be hammered into something that won't shatter at the first blow. He slams his cane into the ground so hard the sound makes you flinch. I am the hammer. The morning begins with drills, endless drills. You're handed a practice sword that feels heavier than yesterday, though you know it's the same. The wood bites into your tender palms, reopening blisters until blood smears across the grain. Stance the master shouts, and you spread your feet apart as instructed, knees bent. Strike you, swing downward, clumsy off balance. The master snarls, whacks your ankle with the cane so hard you yelp. Laughter erupts from the older boys, but dies instantly when the cane whips through the air again. Strike after strike, your arms grow weaker, your shoulders burn, and the blade begins to shake in your hands. Every mistake earns a barked insult or a sharp sting of the cane. At one point, your grip slips and the sword clatters to the ground. The master is on you in a flash, his face inches from yours, his breath hot with fury. If you drop steel on a battlefield, boy, you're dead. Worse, your knight is dead. Worse still, your shame lives forever. He shoves the sword back into your hands. Do not let it fall again. Hours blur together. The sun claws its way higher, burning the mist away, and sweat drenches your tunic despite the cold. Around you, boys collapse into the dirt, panting only to be hauled upright and forced to continue. By the time the horn signals a break, your arms feel like dead weight, your hands raw meat. You slump onto the grass chest, heaving visions swimming. Thomas drops beside you, just as soaked in sweat, though he hides it better. He flashes you a quick grin, not cruel this time, but tired. Welcome to real training, he says, gulping from a flask before handing it to you. The water tastes like heaven. You manage a weak laugh, though every breath burns, but the respite is short. The next lesson is not about swords, it is about obedience. The squires take turns ordering you and the other new pages around, barking commands as if they were knights themselves. Fetch my shield, polish this armor until I see my face, run to the stables and back. It's humiliating, but there's no choice. When one boy hesitates, he is struck across the cheek so hard his head snaps sideways. You do as you're told, every muscle aching, swallowing your pride with each order. Polishing armor is its own torment. You kneel in the dirt, scrubbing bronze and steel until your reflection gleams back at you. Each dent tells a story, clashes with enemy blades, blows taken in tournaments, scars of survival. As you trace a deep scratch along the curve of a breastplate, you wonder, will you ever bear such marks yourself? Or will you remain forever the one polishing, not wearing? By late afternoon, your body trembles with exhaustion, but the day is not finished. The horn calls again, and you're marched to the tilt yard, where knights themselves train. Horses thunder across the field, knights in mail and plate, lowering lances that crash into wooden targets with a crack like thunder. Splinters fly, and the sheer power of the impact makes your bones vibrate. You stand at the edge, wide eyed, as if staring into the future. One knight dismounts, tossing his lance aside, and strides over. His armor clinks with every step, polished to a mirror shine. He lifts his visor, revealing a face weathered by years, eyes like cold steel. Pages, he says, his voice, carrying authority enough to silence the field. Remember what you see today. Remember the sound of wood breaking, the feel of the ground shaking. One day you may be the one riding or the one standing in the dirt. Which do you choose? The question hangs heavy. No one dares answer aloud, but in your chest the answer screams, the rider, always the rider. As dusk bleeds across the sky, you're herded back inside. Dinner is a blur of noise and hunger. You tear into bread and broth as though you've never eaten before, barely tasting it. The knights laugh at their own table mugs, slamming together, voices booming. At one point, a knight tosses a bone to the floor and Thomas elbows you. Pick it up. You hesitate, pride warring with fatigue, but in the end, you stoop and retrieve it, setting it aside. The knight doesn't even look your way. The night ends with prayers in the chapel, voices low and weary. The flicker of candlelight casts long shadows on the stone walls, and the air smells of wax and incense. You murmur the words, stumbling on the Latin, but this time the priest does not strike you. His gaze lingers softer, as though he sees something, perhaps only determination, perhaps only desperation. Back in the dormitory, you collapse, too tired even to dream. But just before sleep takes you, you hear Thomas whisper in the dark, "Don't break Greenling. The first week's the hardest. Survive that, and maybe you'll last." The words echo in your mind as darkness pulls you under. And though your body aches and your spirit feels frayed, a spark inside you refuses to die, because somewhere beneath the pain, the humiliation, the endless labor, you know the truth. You are climbing, slowly, painfully, but climbing all the same. Tomorrow will be worse, but tomorrow also brings you one step closer. The dawn creeps in with a pale gold light spilling across the courtyard stones, as though the sun itself hesitates to enter this place of labor and trial. Your eyes flicker open before the horn even sounds. Your body has already learned that sleep here is brief and brittle, a privilege rather than a right. The straw beneath you scratches your skin. Your muscles ache like old iron, and your palms are blistered raw, but still you rise.
You rise because you must, because no one will wait for you, and because somewhere beneath all that pain is a stubborn ember that refuses to fade. This morning is different. There's a strange buzz in the dormitory, a tension in the way the other pages move, whispering behind cupped hands. Thomas smirks at you when you ask, his tone teasing yet tinged with excitement. Today, you meet the horses, he says, dragging out the words as though savoring them. If they don't trample you first, he claps you on the back, hard enough to make your sore muscles flare with protest, then pulls on his tunic. You'll wish you'd stayed with polishing armor once you smell the stables. Breakfast is as plain and rushed as ever, but today you barely taste it. Your stomach knots with a mix of hunger and nerves, the bread sticking in your throat, the watered ale no more than a ghost of refreshment. Then the horn blares, echoing off the stone walls, and the line of boys is marched across the courtyard toward the stables. The stables loom ahead, larger than you imagined. Their timbers creak dark with age, and the air is already thick with the smell Thomas promised: hay, sweat, manure, and something deeper, almost electric, that thrums in your bones. Horses snort and stamp inside massive silhouettes shifting in the half light. As the door creaks open, you feel it heat and power, rolling out like a living wave. These are not the plodding beasts of farm fields. These are war horses, destriers bred for strength, bred to carry armored men into chaos. The stable master waits, arms folded, a scar curling down his cheek like a snake.
His eyes sweep over you with the same sharpness as the weapons masters, and you wonder if all old men in castles are carved from the same merciless stone. Pages, he says, his voice gravel rough. Today you learn respect. Respect for beasts stronger than you, braver than you, and if you're not careful, more dangerous than you. He points to the first stall, and your heart stutters. The horse inside is enormous, a wall of rippling muscle beneath a sleek, dark coat. Its mane falls in tangled waves, and its eyes gleam with a mixture of intelligence and disdain. The stable master gestures to you, new boy, in. Every eye turns toward you. Your feet move as though weighed down, but somehow you cross the straw strewn floor to the stall. The gate creaks as you unlatch it, and the horse snorts, tossing its head as if to say, "You dare." The smell envelops you, earthy, pungent, overwhelming. You reach out with a trembling hand, palm open, remembering something Thomas whispered: never show fear. They smell it. The horse's hot breath washes over your skin. For a heartbeat, the world narrows to those flaring nostrils, that massive head, those eyes that seem to see straight through you. Then, miracle, it lowers its head, allowing you to touch its muzzle. Coarse hair brushes against your palm, and a strange shiver runs up your arm. For the first time since you arrived, something feels like acceptance. The stable master grunts. "Not bad. Now brush him." The brush feels clumsy in your hand, and each stroke earns you a swish of the tail or a stomp of the hoof. You nearly trip over your own feet more than once, but you keep at it, sweat dripping down your back, straw clinging to your tunic. Around you, other boys struggle. One nearly gets bitten, another shoved into the wall. The stables fill with laughter, curses, and the restless thunder of hooves.
By the time you're done, your arms are shaking, but the horse's coat gleams like polished bronze in the shafts of light piercing the timbers. The stable master nods once, almost approving, before barking, "Next lesson, riding." The words hit you like a hammer. Riding. You've dreamed of it, of course, of soaring across fields, cloaks snapping in the wind, sword raised high. But now, faced with the reality, your mouth goes dry. Outside, the tilt yard is marked by churned earth and wooden fences, a space that smells of dust and sweat. The horses are let out snorting clouds into the cold air. You're hoisted into the saddle by two squires who clearly enjoy jostling you harder than necessary. The saddle creaks, the horse shifts beneath you, and your stomach drops. From this height, the world looks different, precarious. Sit straight, the stable master barks. Grip with your knees, not your hands. Your hands are for the reins, not clinging like a child to his mother's skirts.
The horse lurches forward and panic shoots through you. You cling anyway, knuckles white, until Thomas rides up alongside and hisses ease up, or you'll make him angry. Trust him. His voice, surprisingly calm, steadies you. You loosen your grip, and slowly, miraculously, the horse's gait smooths into a rhythm you can almost follow. The world sways, the wind touches your face, and for the briefest moment, it feels like flying. Then the horse stops dead. You pitch forward, nearly tumbling over its neck, saved only by Thomas grabbing your arm. Laughter explodes around the tilt yard, the older boys pointing and jeering. Your cheeks burn, but the stable master's growl silences them. Better to fall now than in battle, he says. Remember, your horse is your partner. Treat him well, and he may carry you home. Treat him poorly, and he'll leave you to rot in the mud.
By dusk, your legs ache from gripping the saddle, your back is stiff, and your pride is battered, but a strange exhilaration hums in your chest. You've ridden, you've survived, you've taken one more step into a world that once seemed impossible. That night, the hall roars with the clamor of knights boasting about jousts and skirmishes, their voices filling the rafters. You sit at the end of the page's table, gnawing on hard bread, too tired to care about the jeers thrown your way. Yet when Thomas leans over and mutters, "Not bad for your first day," you allow yourself a faint smile. In the chapel later, candlelight flickers over worn stone, and your whispered prayers blur into the hum of voices around you. You ask for strength, for courage, for fewer bruises tomorrow. But above all, you whisper thanks for the horse that didn't throw you for the chance, however small, to keep climbing. Back in the dormitory, the straw feels less cruel against your skin. Exhaustion drags you down, but before sleep claims you, you realize something each day here strips you raw, but it also builds something new in you, layer by painful layer. You are still clay, but now the hammering begins to shape you. And deep inside, as the darkness of sleep closes in, one thought anchors you like a vow. One day, you will not just ride, you will charge. The dawn bell clangs with a violence that feels personal, dragging you from a dream where you were already a knight armor gleaming banner fluttering. The illusion shatters as soon as your bare feet hit the icy stone floor of the dormitory. Every bruise from yesterday's writing lesson screams at once, reminding you that glory here comes only with pain. You shuffle into your tunic and hose rubbing grit from your eyes as Thomas snickers. "Hope you've got more balance with a sword than on a saddle," he whispers. You want to retort, but the words die in your throat.
You're too tired to trade barbs, and besides, today's training is far too important to risk distraction. The air in the courtyard carries the sting of iron and the sharp musk of sweat. You're herded with the other pages toward the armory, a squat building with walls blackened from years of smoke and oil. Inside, racks of weapons glint in the torchlight rows of swords, polearms, and maces, each polished to an unforgiving shine. The smell of oiled steel mixes with leather and charcoal, thick enough to coat your tongue. The weapons master, a towering man with a gray beard and arms like knotted oak branches, steps forward. His voice is a low rumble. Today he growls you stop polishing blades and start earning the right to carry one. You'll hold a sword as though it were an extension of your arm. You'll respect its weight, its balance, its hunger. He lets the words hang, then throws a practice sword at your feet. The clatter echoes like a drumbeat. Pick it up page. The wooden sword feels heavier than you expected. Its balance awkward, the grip rough against your blistered palms. You try to hold it like you've seen knights do straight firm, but the weight drags your wrist down. The weapons master's eyes narrow. Pathetic, he mutters, but instead of yanking it from your hand, he steps closer, positioning your arms. His fingers press your elbows upward. Square your shoulders, shift your grip. The correction is brutal but precise. A sword is not for flailing, he says. Every swing must be deliberate. Every thrust must aim for a purpose. Around you, the tilt yard fills with the clatter of wooden blades and the yelps of boys smacked too slow to block. Dust rises in hazy columns, illuminated by the morning sun. The sound is chaotic, but there's a strange rhythm beneath it, the beginning of discipline. Your turn comes quickly. You're paired with Thomas naturally, his grin wide and wolfish. Try not to cry when I bruise you, he taunts. You grip the sword tighter, ignoring the way your palms sting. The weapons master signals and Thomas lunges. You barely have time to raise your blade before his strike crashes against it, jarring your arms to the bone. Pain shoots up your wrists and your grip falters. He presses forward, relentless, his blows raining down like hammer strikes. You stumble back, heart hammering, until your foot catches on the dirt and you fall hard, the sword clattering from your hand. Laughter ripples through the boys watching. Pathetic, the master barks again, and heat floods your cheeks. Before you can scramble to your feet, he seizes your collar and yanks you upright. His voice is a hiss near your ear. Falling is allowed, staying down is not. He shoves you back toward Thomas. Again, you grit your teeth, pick up the sword, and face him once more. This time, when Thomas lunges, you remember to angle the blade deflecting instead of absorbing. The impact still rattles your bones, but you manage to hold your ground. A flicker of surprise crosses his face. Encouraged, you push back, swinging clumsily, but with enough force to make him stagger half a step. A cheer rises from a few boys nearby, though it's quickly drowned out by jeers. The spar drags on, sweat stinging your eyes, arms trembling with the weight of the sword. Every breath feels like fire, yet beneath the exhaustion, something stirs a spark of pride. You are not winning, not by any measure, but you are not running either. You are still standing. At last, the weapons master calls a halt. You and Thomas drop your blades, panting, sweat dripping into the dirt. The master's eyes scan the field. Weak, he says flatly, all of you. But weakness can be hammered into strength. If you survive the hammering, his gaze lingers on you for a heartbeat longer than the rest. Then he turns away. The day doesn't end there. Afternoon brings drills, endless drills.
Swing, thrust, block, repeat until your arms feel carved from stone. The sun beats down mercilessly, and more than once you nearly drop the sword from sheer exhaustion. Blisters bloom on your hands, bursting and bleeding, but no one dares complain. The only breaks come when the weapons master strides past, barking corrections, his voice like thunder. During one pause, Thomas leans toward you, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. Not bad, he admits grudgingly. Didn't think you'd last this long. It's hardly praise, but from him it feels like gold. You nod, too winded to answer, but inside, something steadies. By the time the horn sounds for supper, you are barely able to walk. The sword drags at your side like a lead weight, and every step grinds your muscles raw. Yet the hall feels different tonight. The laughter and boasting of the knights are still distant thunder, but at your table the pages are quieter eyes, glazed with exhaustion. Even Thomas doesn't bother to mock.
Everyone eats like wolves, tearing bread, gulping broth, too tired to jeer. Later in the chapel, candle flames waver as voices chant prayers in low tones. You kneel, hands raw and bruised, whispering your own, not for an easier tomorrow, but simply for the strength to lift the sword again when it comes. Historians still argue whether knights saw themselves as warriors of God or mercenaries in armor, but in this moment, with your knees pressed to cold stone, you know it feels like both. When you finally collapse onto your straw pallet, your body aches in places you didn't know existed. But before sleep swallows you, a strange realization settles in today. For the first time, you didn't just survive, you fought back. And somewhere in that dirt and sweat and laughter, you began, however clumsily, to feel like a knight's apprentice. The morning bell jolts you awake, but today, instead of being herded toward the tilt yard and the clang of swords, you and the other apprentices are marched into the great hall. You expect another round of drills or perhaps chores, but instead the steward greets you. He is a tall, austere man, his robe of fine wool falling in neat folds, his beard trimmed with almost mathematical precision. His voice cuts through the air like a knife. Today he announces you will learn what separates a knight from a brute. You will learn how to be seen. Strength is nothing without honor, and honor is nothing without conduct. Already your shoulders ache from yesterday's beating, and the thought of standing stiffly through lessons in manners feels like a punishment of a different kind. But you soon realize that to the steward, this training is no less serious than swordsmanship. The hall has been stripped of its usual raucousness. Where knights usually dine and bellow, the long oaken tables have been polished until they gleam. Candles flicker in silver sconces, filling the air with a faint scent of tallow and beeswax. Servants hover at the edges of the room, silently observing as though their gaze alone might catch you out. The steward strides between the benches like a general among troops. He slams his cane against the table, and the crack echoes. Sit, he commands, and you scramble into place with the others. The first lesson begins with posture. You are not peasants slumped in a field hut, he says, eyes narrowing at Thomas, whose elbows immediately leave the table. You are not swine at a trough. He moves behind you, yanks your shoulders back until your spine feels like a bowstring and adjusts your chin upward. Sit as though you command respect, even when you are still a boy with straw in his hair. The position is uncomfortable, but you hold it, sweat prickling the back of your neck under his stare.
Then come the utensils, or more accurately, the lack of them. Wooden trenchers are laid out along with knives for cutting and scooping. The steward demonstrates how to carve a piece of meat without stabbing wildly, how to tear bread with precision rather than greed. Each motion speaks, he intones. Clumsy eating tells the world you are clumsy elsewhere. You try to mimic his movements. The knife wobbles in your grip, and your bread tears raggedly. Across the table, Thomas manages better, smirking as his chunk of bread breaks clean. You glare at him, but when the steward catches your eye, you duck your head back to the task. The meal is served as though it were a feast, platters of roasted fowl, bowls of pottage, wheels of cheese. Your stomach growls, but you hesitate to touch the food. The steward circles like a hawk. Patience, he says sharply at one boy who reaches too quickly. The meal is a ritual. You wait until the highest ranking man is served, and only then may you eat.
To rush is to dishonor. At last he signals. You lift a morsel of meat, careful not to smear grease across your tunic. It tastes heavenly after hours of training, but you are so focused on holding yourself correctly that you barely savor it. Then comes the true test conversation. The steward orders you all to speak, but not of nonsense, A knight must hold court, he declares. He must discuss matters of land law, faith, and war. He must flatter without groveling and disagree without insult. The hall erupts into awkward murmurs. You scramble for something intelligent to say. Thomas launches into a bold declaration about the superiority of French horses, gesturing dramatically with his knife until the steward raps him on the wrist. Another boy mutters about the quality of barley in last year's harvest. You hesitate, then recall a sermon you once overheard in the chapel about the duties of nobles to protect the poor. Tentatively, you speak, "My lord." Perhaps a knight's honor is proven not only on the field, but also in the keeping of peace within his lands. For a moment, silence falls. The steward regards you with raised brows. Not entirely foolish, he concedes. Remember, lads, a sword wins land, but wisdom keeps it. Your chest swells at the faint praise, even as Thomas rolls his eyes. After the meal, the steward shifts lessons to ritual. You're drilled in how to greet a lady, bow. From the waist, never slouch. How to address a lord, kneel briefly, eyes lowered but not groveling. How to enter a hall, announce yourself, wait to be acknowledged. It feels absurd at first, this endless choreography of nods and bows, but then the steward reminds you every gesture is a signal. To the commoner, it is proof of your superiority. To your fellow knight, it is proof you belong. And to God, it is proof you understand humility. The hours stretch. You practice until your back aches from the bows, until your knees are sore from kneeling, yet you see the pattern forming just as sword drills built muscle memory. These endless rituals build the reflexes of respect. As the sun dips lower, the steward sets one final test. He seats you at the table again, this time with knights present observing silently. The air brims with tension. Every movement feels exaggerated, the placement of your hands, the careful cutting of bread. A knight watches you like a hawk, eyes cold but curious. When the moment for conversation arrives, Thomas launches into a bold jest that earns a chuckle, but you sense the knight's eyes flick to you. You breathe deep, steadying yourself, and speak of the weather's effect on crops weaving in a reference to God's providence. It feels stiff rehearsed, but the knight nods faintly, and for the first time, you feel a glimmer of belonging. By the time night falls, your body aches no less than after combat training, though in entirely different ways. You collapse onto your pallet head, swimming with rules of posture, etiquette, words, to use words to avoid. It all seems impossibly vast, yet as you drift towards sleep, you recall the steward's final words. A knight wields two weapons, his sword and his tongue. Neglect either, and you are nothing more than a thug in armor. Your hands may still blister from the sword, but tonight your mind blisters too. And in that pain, you sense the slow, grinding transformation, not just from boy to warrior, but from boy to knight. The day begins not with the clang of steel or the bark of the steward, but with the deep, resonant snort of horses in the stables. The air is thick with the smell of hay leather and sweat. Morning sunlight streams through the slats in the stable walls, casting golden beams across rows of restless destriers and palfreys. Their hooves scrape against the packed earth, their breath steaming in the chill air. You stand among the other apprentices, your stomach already tight with nerves. Today is not about swords or bows or manners at table. Today you face the creatures that elevate knights above foot soldiers, the horses that make them living thunder on the battlefield. The stable master arrives a squat man with arms like tree trunks and a permanent scowl carved into his face. His clothes are simple stained tunic, cracked leather boots, but when he strides between the stalls, every horse stills as though recognizing his authority. So he growls. They think you're ready to sit on a war horse. We'll see if you can stay on long enough not to break your neck. His laugh is dry and humorless. He begins with names. Each boy is assigned a horse, not the mighty destriers yet, but smaller, wiry steeds bred for endurance and agility. When your name is called, a stable boy leads forward a brown gelding with keen, intelligent eyes. The horse stamps its hoof impatiently, tossing its head. You swallow hard. Touch him, the stable master orders. Let him know you're sent. Let him know you are master, or he will master you. Your hand trembles as you reach out, stroking the horse's neck. Its skin twitches beneath your fingers, warm and alive. For a moment, it seems about to shy away, but then it snorts and lowers its head slightly. Relief floods through you, though the stable master only grunts. Better than most. Don't make me regret saying that. The first lesson is not riding, but understanding. You are taught how to brush the horse's coat until it gleams, how to pick the stones from its hooves, how to tighten the girth without pinching. Hours pass with sweat trickling down your back as you labor over your mount. The stable master circles, barking corrections. Too loose. That saddle'll slip and kill you faster than any sword. Too tight, he'll buck you off before you leave the yard. Only when the sun is high are you finally allowed to climb into the saddle. The moment you swing your leg over the horse shifts, and you feel the ground vanish beneath you. You grip the reins too tightly, and the animal tosses its head in protest. Relax your hands, the stable master roars. You ride with your legs, not your fists. You try again, forcing your knees to hug the horse's sides, loosening your grip on the reins. Slowly, the gelding begins to walk forward. The sensation is alien, your body swaying with the beast's rhythm. Every step a reminder that you are not in control, not yet. Then comes trotting. The stable master cracks a whip against the ground, and the horses break into a faster pace. You bounce painfully in the saddle, your teeth rattling, your backside already sore. Thomas, riding beside you, smirks as though born in the saddle. Not so easy, is it? He calls over the noise. A moment later, his own horse veers sideways, nearly unseating him, and your laughter bursts out before you can stop it. Hours stretch into days. Each morning you return to the stables, and each day you learn something new. First to trot without bouncing, rising in rhythm with the horse's steps, then to canter, feeling the ground fly beneath you in a smooth rolling motion that makes your heart race with exhilaration. Finally, to gallop, wind tearing at your hair as the world blurs the sheer power of the animal carrying you like an arrow loose from a bow. But it is not enough simply to ride. A knight must fight from horseback, and so the stable yard becomes a battlefield. Wooden dummies are erected, their painted shields gleaming in the sun. You are handed a blunted lance, the wood heavy and awkward in your grip. Lower it under your arm, the stable master instructs, and aim with your whole body, not just your hand. Let the horse carry the strike. Your first attempt is a disaster. The lance wobbles wildly, the tip veering past the dummy as your horse veers off course. The impact you expect never comes, and instead the lance dips and strikes the ground, nearly ripping you from the saddle. Laughter erupts from the other apprentices. The stable master shakes his head. A knight and his horse are one body, until you learn that you're just a fool with a stick. Determined, you try again and again. Each failure bruises your arms, your pride, your legs. But slowly, agonizingly slowly, the rhythm begins to come. You learn to guide the horse with the pressure of your knees, to let its movement steady your lance, to trust its power instead of fighting it. One day, with sweat pouring down your face, you lower the lance charge forward, and the tip slams squarely into the dummy's shield with a crack like thunder. The force nearly jolts you out of the saddle, but you hold firm. Cheers rise from the boys watching, And even the stable master gives a curt nod. And then come the war games. The apprentices are divided into teams armed with blunt lances and padded armor. At first, it is chaos horses colliding, boys shouting, lances clattering against shields. But as the days pass, patterns emerge. You learn to wheel your mount with the others, to charge in formation, to strike not as a lone fighter, but as part of a moving wall of flesh and steel. One afternoon, as the sun sinks low, you ride in a mock battle. Dust rises in choking clouds, the thunder of hooves rattling your bones. Ahead, Thomas lowers his lance, his eyes locked on you. For a moment, the world narrows to the two of you, hurtling toward one another. The clash is brutal. Your lance strikes his shield, jolting your arm, while his slams into your cuirass. You stagger in the saddle, clinging desperately, but you remain mounted. Thomas wobbles too, nearly unhorsed, and though neither of you falls, the thrill of the encounter leaves your heart pounding like a war drum. That night, as you collapse onto your straw pallet, every muscle aching, you understand why knights are feared, not because of their swords, nor their armor, nor even their skill, but because of the living mountains they ride, beasts trained for war, whose power multiplies their own. You dream of hooves pounding across fields of lances, striking true, of banners streaming in the wind, and when dawn breaks again, you rise eagerly, ready to return to the stables, to the horse that is no longer just an animal, but a partner. Slowly, painfully, you are learning the truth. Without his mount, a knight is only a man. With it, he becomes a storm. The first thing you notice is the smell damp earth, crushed grass, the faint tang of wood smoke drifting from the far off village. The training yard's dust and stable's musk are gone. Today, the forest and open fields are your classroom. The knights and their apprentices gather at dawn, armor gleaming faintly in the mist, horses snorting as if impatient to charge into the day. This is no ordinary practice session with dummies or fenced arenas, and today you're told you'll learn how to fight where real battles are fought among trees over uneven ground, where the land itself is both weapon and trap. The master at arms rides out first, his destrier moving like a black shadow among the trees, his voice calm but commanding cuts through the morning air. A knight who cannot fight outside his practice yard is no knight at all. Today, you learn to ride through forest trails without breaking your neck, and to strike when there is no open field to charge across. He pauses, lets the words sink in, and then adds with dry humor, and if you fall, don't expect the squirrels to drag you back. A few chuckles ripple through the apprentices, but your stomach twists with nerves. The first drill is weaving between trees. The apprentices are split into pairs, each tasked with guiding their mounts through narrow woodland paths, weaving left and right as branches claw at helmets and bark scrapes against shields. Your horse, eager but stubborn, tries to push straight ahead, forcing you to tug at the reins until your arms burn. The night watching shouts reminders: don't fight him, guide him, use your legs, trust the beast. Slowly you begin to feel the subtle shifts. Your calves pressing your weight, leaning, and the horse responds, swerving between trunks like water flowing around rocks. Branches whip across your cloak. A sharp sting on your cheek makes your eyes water, and then suddenly you burst into a clearing. Thomas emerges beside you, grinning despite a torn sleeve, where a branch ripped through his tunic. Not bad, he calls, though. You looked ready to kiss that oak back there. You roll your eyes, but a laugh escapes you because he's right.
The second drill tests you against ambush. Knights stationed deeper in the woods wait in hiding. You and your companions ride down a narrow track when suddenly wooden spears jab out from the undergrowth. Horses rear, boys shout, and chaos breaks out. You barely keep your seat as your gelding shrieks and leaps sideways. Shield up a knight roars, and you fumble your wooden shield into place just in time to deflect a thrust. The impact rattles your arm to the shoulder, but you hold on. This is no safe yard where you see your enemy coming. Here, danger bursts from shadows, and your only weapon is instinct. When you regroup afterward, the master at arms explains an ambush doesn't care if your armor shines, it cares if you can react. If you freeze, you die. If you panic, your men die. Remember that. His words settle heavy on your chest. You realize suddenly how terrifying the real world beyond the castle walls must be. Then comes the open plain. The forest ends in a wide meadow, golden grass, swaying under the breeze. Here the exercises shift from defense to attack. The apprentices line up in a crude wedge formation, lances leveled, shields ready. Knights win battles not by fighting alone, the master at arms declares, but by moving as one body. Break the line, and you break the army. The signal is given, you spur your horse forward, the thunder of hooves vibrating in your bones. At first, the line falters. One boy veers off, another falls behind, but slowly it straightens. Shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield, the wedge cuts across the meadow like a spear point of flesh and steel. Ahead, straw stuffed dummies serve as the enemy. You crash through them, the impact sending hay flying in the sunlight. The exhilaration is dizzying, you feel, unstoppable part of a living storm. But victory is short lived. The knights counter with their own formation, swooping around the meadow to flank you. Suddenly, you are not the hunter, but the hunted. Their lances smash into shields. Their shouts echo like thunderclaps. You struggle to keep your place in the formation, to resist the urge to break away. Your lance strikes an opponent's shield, jolting your entire arm. Behind you, a boy cries out as his horse stumbles, throwing him into the grass. The formation wavers dangerously. Hold, the master at arms bellows, his voice carrying above the din. Do not scatter. Hold, or you are finished. You grit your teeth, pushing through fear and fatigue. Slowly, miraculously, the line steadies. Together, you drive forward, forcing the knights back, step by step, until they finally wheel away. It isn't true victory. The knights only yielded for the sake of the lesson, but it feels like triumph all the same. Sweat and stings your eyes. Your throat is raw from shouting, and your arms ache from the weight of shield and lance. Yet in your chest burns a fierce pride.
For the first time, you understand what it means to belong to something greater than yourself. As dusk falls, the meadow quiets, the knights call an end to the drills, and the apprentices collapse in the grass, panting and laughing with exhaustion. The sky glows with streaks of red and gold, and somewhere in the distance a wolf howls. You lie on your back, staring at the clouds shifting overhead, your body aching in every joint, and yet a strange peace washes over you. You've ridden through the trees without falling. You've faced ambush without fleeing. You've charged in formation without breaking. For all the bruises and scrapes, for all the terror of those sudden wooden spears, you have learned something precious. A knight is never truly alone. Whether it is his horse beneath him or his brothers beside him, his strength comes not only from his arm, but from the bond of those around him. As the group trudges back to the castle, torches flickering against the encroaching night, the master at arms walks among you. His expression, usually carved from stone, softens just enough for you to see it. Not useless, he mutters almost to himself. And in the world of knights, you know that is as high a praise as you're likely to hear. That night, long after the castle grows silent, you dream of forests alive with danger, of open fields shaking with the fury of charging hooves, and of yourself riding at the heart of it all, not a child fumbling with reins, but a knight's apprentice, on the cusp of something greater. The clang of metal jolts you awake before the sun even clears the battlements. Today is different. You can feel it in the tension that hangs over the yard, in the way the knights sharpen their blades with an intensity that makes your stomach twist. Gone are the lances and the mounted drills of yesterday. The master at arms stands waiting a steel longsword balanced easily in his hands, as though the heavy blade is nothing more than a walking stick. His eyes narrow when he sees the apprentices shuffling in still bleary. If yesterday was about the horse beneath you, he growls. Today is about the steel in your hand. Learn this or you won't live to swing twice. The yard smells of oil and iron. Swords, axes, and blunt maces lie in neat rows across a wooden bench. Each apprentice is handed one the steel cold even through your gloves. Your fingers tremble, not from the chill, but from the weight of it. A wooden practice sword was one thing light enough to swing until your arms ached. But this is different. This blade hums with the promise of violence. The edges are dulled for training, yes, but even dulled edges can shatter bone if wielded wrong. The master at arms begins with the basics: feet wide knees, bent sword close to the body. He demonstrates the guard stance, and his movements are sharp, precise, stripped of all flourish. Forget what troubadour is seeing, he sneers. This isn't dancing, it's surviving. If you swing wild like a drunk in a tavern, you'll be gutted before you finish your first verse. You mimic his stance, your muscles stiff. He prowls between you and the other apprentices, tapping shoulders, nudging elbows, kicking heels into position. When he reaches you, his eyes flicker over your form. For a brief, terrifying moment, you're sure he'll bark some insult. Instead, he only grunts, better. But if you lift your chin like that, someone will lop it off. Then come the drills. Strike, parry, strike. The clang of steel rings out in rapid rhythm, the yard alive with its own kind of music. Your partner for the day is Thomas, his face red with concentration as he swings at you. The first blow nearly rips your sword from your grip. The second sends a shiver through your arm so strong it numbs your fingers. You parry clumsily, your blade screeching against his. Sparks spit from the clash. Sweat beads at your brow despite the cool morning air. Don't just block the master at arms' thunders. Guide his blow away. Turn his strength against him. He demonstrates with another apprentice, and in a blur, the boy's sword clatters to the dirt. You swallow hard, reset your stance, and try again. This time, when Thomas strikes, you twist your blade just enough to slide his aside. His eyes widen as his balance falters, and for the first time, you feel a flicker of control. The lesson doesn't stop with swords. Axes are next heavier, shorter, brutal in their simplicity. The handle strains your wrist as you lift it, and the downward strike thuds into the training dummy with a sickening weight. Unlike the sword, which demands finesse, the axe is all raw power. An axe doesn't care if your foe is armored, the master at arms explains. It bites, it hooks, it tears. He swings his own in a vicious arc that nearly splits the dummy in half. The apprentices wince, imagining ribs cracking beneath such a blow. By midday, your arms feel like lead. Blisters bloom on your palms, your shoulders scream, and yet the drills continue. Maces are last, simple iron heads on sturdy shafts. No blade, no edge, only crushing force. When you slam it against the wooden dummy, the sound is like a drumbeat of thunder. The master's voice carries above the din. If a knight can't pierce, he crushes. If he can't crush, he trips. And if he can't trip, he yanks an apprentice's legs out with the mace's shaft, sending him sprawling. Then he's dead. After hours of sweat and bruises, the real test begins sparring. You and Thomas are thrown into a circle, blades raised. The other apprentices gather around, jeering and cheering the way villagers might at a festival brawl. First blood, the master says simply, "Go."
The world narrows to Thomas's eyes. the glint of his sword, the dirt beneath your boots. He lunges, you parry barely, the impact jarring your teeth. He presses fast and reckless, and you stumble backward, shield arm aching. The circle of boys roars. Your lungs burn panic claws at your chest, but somewhere in the chaos you hear the master's voice: don't block, guide. The next strike comes down hard. Instead of meeting it head on, you turn your blade just so, sliding his off to the side. His momentum carries him forward, and you step in the tip of your sword, landing gently against his chest. Not enough to wound, but enough to count. Silence falls for a heartbeat before the circle erupts in laughter and groans. Thomas drops his blade with a sigh, grinning despite the loss. Beginner's luck, he mutters, though his eyes shine with respect. The master at arms nods once, a rare smile ghosting his lips. Not entirely useless after all.
You collapse onto the dirt after the sparring ends, your muscles trembling too much to hold you upright. Around you, boys nurse bruises, split lips, and swelling fingers. Some laugh, others sulk, but all of you share the same glazed exhaustion, the kind that only comes after pushing your body to its limit. As dusk settles, the knights demonstrate one last exercise. In pairs, they show how sword axe and mace aren't just tools, but answers to one another. A knight with a shield can resist a sword, but the axe hooks and yanks it away. A knight in plate can shrug off the axe's bite, but the mace crushes him through his armor. And a sword, quick, versatile, strikes at the gaps left open. Each weapon, each technique is a language, and together they form the grammar of survival. Lying in bed that night, every joint in your body throbbing, you find yourself gripping an imaginary hilt. You replay each clash, each spark, each shouted command.
In your dreams, the yard becomes a battlefield. The apprentices become enemies, and you stand at the center blade, raised, not a child fumbling with wood, but a warrior shaping steel into something that might, just might, keep you alive. And though you can't yet call yourself a knight for the first time, you feel that your hands know the weight of war. The bells toll long before dawn, their deep iron voices echoing across the stone walls of the castle and out into the dark countryside beyond. You jolt awake in the barracks, your body stiff and aching from the day before. At first, you expect another day of drills, another morning of sweat and bruises. But when you step outside, the chill in the air tells you this day is different. The castle stirs with a restless energy, knights striding purposefully across the yard, their armor clattering like 1,000 church bells. The stable boys are already awake, tightening saddles, calming restless horses that seem to sense what's coming. What's
Today, the apprentices will march not to train, but to serve. You are to ride with your master and witness war, not from the pages of an illuminated manuscript, but in the flesh, in mud and blood. The master at arms gathers you and the other boys at the gate. His face is grim, his voice low. You are not knights. Remember that. You are here to serve, to carry, to fetch, to observe. But keep your eyes open. Every battle teaches more than 100 drills. He glances over your group, and for the briefest moment, you catch a flicker of pity in his gaze. The knights assemble in gleaming rows. Morning light creeps over the battlements and sets their polished helmets ablaze in a halo of steel. The banner of your lord is unfurled, a golden lion teeth, bared claw raised as if it could leap from the cloth itself. You feel a swell of pride and dread all at once, a weight pressing on your chest. You clutch the reins of your horse, a skittish gray mare still untested in battle. She shifts beneath you ears, flicking as though she too knows what lies ahead. The column moves, the creak of leather, the pounding of hooves, the steady rhythm of men marching with pikes slung over their shoulders. It all melds into a single, relentless sound. You ride among them, your apprentice's gear strapped awkwardly to your back, extra arrows, a water flask, a bundle of bandages. The road winds through misty fields, the peasants who live there watching in silence, their faces pale and drawn. Some cross themselves as you pass, others bow their heads, none smile. The march is long, but your master rides tall and silent, his eyes fixed ahead. At last you crest a hill and see it a battlefield waiting to be written, two forces already arrayed against each other in the valley below. To the west, your lord's men form tight ranks, banners snapping in the wind. To the east, the enemy waits a sea of spears and shields their own banners, a riot of colors and beasts snarling as if alive. The air thrums with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle and your heart pound against your ribs. You dismount with the other squires and apprentices, leading your horse to the rear. From here, you're safe enough to watch, though the safety feels like a thin veil ready to tear at the first arrow. Your master adjusts his armor with practiced ease, his squire checking every strap, every buckle, every clasp. He kneels briefly, pressing his lips to the cross on his sword pommel, whispering a prayer that you strain to hear but cannot. Then, with a final nod, he strides toward the line of mounted knights gathering on the flank. You stand there, hands trembling, and realize the truth. Today, you may see men, you know men. You've eaten with, spoken to, trained beside, cut down before your eyes. The horns blow, a sound like thunder, rolling over the earth. The infantry surges forward, shields raise pikes, bristling like a living forest. The ground shakes beneath their march. Your heart eyes breath, ragged as the first clash erupts, a roar of steel against steel, of men shouting, screaming, dying. From where you stand, the field becomes chaos incarnate. Then the knights move. They thunder forward in perfect formation, a wedge of steel and horseflesh crashing into the enemy flank. You watch wide-eyed as your master's lance shatters against a shield, the splinters scattering like deadly rain. He draws his sword in a single motion and swings the arc of the blade, bright and terrible in the morning sun. Men fall around him, trampled beneath hooves or struck down by steel. The enemy breaks like a wave against rock, their cries filling the valley. Around you, apprentices scramble with tasks. One boy dashes forward to bring water skins to the soldiers holding the rear.
Another drags a wounded man back behind the line, his tunic already soaked crimson. You freeze for a moment, paralyzed by the sheer enormity of it all, the noise, the blood, the stench of iron and fear thick in your throat. But then a squire shouts at you, thrusting a bundle of arrows into your arms. To the archers, go you run. The earth is uneven churned, mud slick beneath your boots. Arrows hiss overhead, some so close you hear them hum past your ears. You reach the archers just as they let loose another volley, their bows bending like the ribs of great beasts. You toss the arrows down, hands shaking, and they barely nod, too focused on their deadly rhythm. When you turn back toward the field, you see your master again. He fights like a storm, given flesh his blade, cutting arcs through the chaos. A man swings an axe at his head, but he leans aside the blow, whistling past. Another charges spear thrusting, but your master catches it with his shield and rams his horse forward, crushing the man beneath hooves. For a moment, you think him invincible, untouchable, a figure from the old songs. But then you see it, a knot of enemy knights pushing forward, their armor darker, their movements ruthless. One levels a lance at your master's side. Time slows. You scream, though the sound vanishes in the roar of battle. Your master twists shield raised, but the lance strikes. He staggers in the saddle, his horse screaming in pain. The two of them topple crashing into the mud. Without thinking, you run. Apprentices aren't meant for the field. You know this, but your legs carry you forward across the torn ground past the fallen and the dying. You skid to your knees beside him. His armor is dented blood seeping through the cracks. His horse lies thrashing broken. His eyes meet yours, pain and fury burning in them. Help me up, he growls, voice ragged.
Your hands shake as you grab at his arm, trying to haul him upright. He's impossibly heavy in his armor, but somehow together you drag him to his feet. He stumbles, but he does not fall. His sword is still in his hand, and with a roar, he swings at the enemy knight who dares approach. Steel clashes, sparks fly, and you are thrown backward by the force of it. The battle rages around you, blurring into a maelstrom of sound and fury. You crawl, stagger, gasp for air, your heart hammering so violently it feels like it might burst. And yet, through the haze of fear, you feel it a spark of pride. You stood beside him. You did not run. When at last the enemy begins to break, retreating in ragged clusters, the valley is littered with the wreckage of men and horse alike. The knights regroup battered but unbowed their banners, still snapping defiantly in the wind. Your master leans on his sword, blood streaking his armor, but his gaze is steady, unbroken. He finds you among the carnage, nods once, and says the words you never thought you'd hear. You didn't disgrace yourself today. They are simple words, almost harsh in their delivery, but to you, they carry the weight of an accolade greater than gold. That night you sit by the campfires that dot the darkened field, the air thick with the smell of smoke, sweat, and death. Around you, men murmur prayers for the fallen, their voices low and weary. You stare into the flames, replaying every heartbeat of the day, the terror, the chaos, the blood, all of it etched into your memory, never to fade. And though you know this was only the beginning, that war will demand more of you than you can yet fathom, one truth takes root in your heart. You have stepped into the world of knights, not as a boy fumbling with wooden swords, but as an apprentice tempered in fire and fear. The battlefield lies behind you, but it lingers still in the smell that clings to your clothes, in the dried blood beneath your nails, in the ringing silence that fills your ears when the chaos finally subsides. Dawn breaks on the morning after battle, a pale sun straining to rise through the smoke that hangs low over the valley. The world seems muted, as though even the birds dare not sing. You are woken not by bells, but by silence. For a moment, you wonder if you've died, if the night swallowed you whole and carried you to some limbo between this life and the next. Then you hear the cough of a wounded soldier nearby, the scrape of armor, as men shift uncomfortably on the hard ground, and you realize you are still here, still breathing, still alive. Your master's tent is pitched on a small rise overlooking the remnants of the camp. He sits at its entrance armor, stripped away his linen undershirt, soaked dark at the ribs where yesterday's lance pierced him.
His face is pale but composed, his hands steady as he sharpens his sword with slow, deliberate strokes. It is not the gesture of a man recovering from near death, but of one reminding himself that he is still ready, still dangerous. When his eyes find you, they narrow briefly as if measuring something in you that he hadn't seen before yesterday. You did not run, he says at last. The words are blunt, more observation than praise. You held your ground when many men twice your age fled. Remember that. Fear will always be there, but it does not own you unless you give it the reins. You bow your head, not trusting your voice. He gestures for you to sit. You lower yourself onto the grass beside him, the damp earth soaking into your trousers, and for the first time since your apprenticeship began, he speaks to you not as a master to a boy, but as one warrior to another. Yesterday you glimpsed it. He continues his voice low, rasping with weariness. The truth of this life.
Glory is not golden banners or shining armor. It is mud, blood, the screams of dying men. And yet he pauses, turning the blade in his hand so the weak sunlight glints off its edge. It is also the moment you find your courage. That is why men seek it, why they endure it, not for fame, not for riches, but because in battle you cannot lie to yourself. He slides the sword back into its scabbard and rises slowly, favoring his wounded side. You spring to your feet to steady him, but he waves you off. I will walk, he insists. Pain is a teacher sharper than any master. The camp stirs around you. Some men bandage wounds, their faces tight with pain. Others sit slumped in a silence, eyes hollow, staring at nothing. A few sharpen their weapons, though the sound is more habit than preparation. Death lingers everywhere, not in the form of corpses they have been dragged to the mass grave beyond the ridge, but in the silence of those who survived. You are sent with the other apprentices to fetch water from a stream that trickles through the valley. The task seems absurd after the bloodshed you witnessed, almost insultingly ordinary. But as you kneel by the water's edge, filling skins and buckets, you catch your reflection in the rippling surface. The boy you see there is not the same who left the castle days ago. His eyes are darker, his jaw tighter, his face smudged with dirt, and something deeper, something that will never fully wash away. On the way back, you pass the burial pit. You wish you hadn't. The stench strikes first sharp and cloying. The earth has been churned up dark and wet, a grave too shallow for the number of bodies crammed into it. You recognize some of the faces or what's left of them. The knight who once corrected your stance with a wooden sword, the soldier who laughed at supper and slipped you extra bread. They are silent now, their mouths twisted in the final grimace of men who did not expect to leave the world so soon. You force yourself to look because turning away feels like cowardice. One of the older squires mutters a prayer as you pass, his voice trembling. Another retches, spilling what little food he had in his stomach onto the grass. You say nothing. The pit is not a sight you can put into words. Later that morning, the priest comes. His voice rises in Latin chants over the field, calling down mercy for the souls of the fallen. Few listen with true devotion. Most simply bow their heads out of habit, their thoughts elsewhere. You catch fragments of whispered conversations around the camp, rumors of another battle, brewing of reinforcements, gathering of enemy forces regrouping only a day's march away. Your master listens to none of it. He orders you to gather your gear, to polish his armor, to ready the horse that somehow survived the carnage. As you work, you dare to ask the question that has gnawed at you since yesterday. Master, were you afraid? He pauses, the whetstone in his hand stilled. For a long moment, he says nothing, and you fear you've overstepped. Then he nods slowly. Of course, only a fool feels nothing, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is walking through it, blade in hand. His words settle deep into you, heavier than the armor you struggle to lift. They are not a knight's flowery oath, nor a bard's tale of heroism. They are truth, plain and sharp. By evening, the camp has changed. The silence gives way to a restless energy, a tension that hums in every movement. Scouts ride in with news of enemy banners sighted near the forest line. The wounded are moved to the rear apprentices tasked with tending them. Knights gather in small clusters, sharpening swords, murmuring prayers, adjusting straps and buckles. And then, as the sun sinks into the horizon, staining the sky in shades of crimson and gold, the order comes: break camp, march at dawn. That night, you lie awake beneath the stars, the earth hard beneath your back. Around you, men snore, cough, or murmur restless dreams. You stare upward at the endless sky, and wonder if the stars look different to those who have fallen. Do they see them still? Or does death snuff out even the heavens? Sleep does not come easily. When it does, it is filled with dreams of shields, splintering of swords, flashing of your master's blood, staining the grass. You wake before the dawn, bell heart, pounding sweat cold on your skin. The horizon glows faintly, promising another day of march, another day of blood. And as you rise to begin it, you feel the truth pressing in on you from all sides. This is no longer training. This is no longer play. You are a knight's apprentice, not in name, but in the crucible of war itself.
And the crucible has only just begun to burn. The march begins before dawn, the camp stirring like a wounded beast dragging itself upright. Torches flare against the gray morning, their flames struggling in the damp air, casting flickering halos across armor still dented from yesterday's fight. The clamor of men rising boots, stamping straps, tightening coughs, echoing becomes a rhythm that drowns out the silence of the graves left behind. You shoulder your pack, still heavier than you are accustomed to, and fall into step behind your master, who moves with the steady limp of a man determined to let pain sharpen him rather than slow him. The line snakes across the valley floor, a living river of iron and leather shields and lances, gleaming faintly under the rising sun. The ground crunches beneath your boots, brittle with frost. Breath steams in the chill air, a thousand puffs, rising like smoke from an invisible fire.
You glance to the left and right, apprentices like yourself, trudging with tired eyes, knights whispering quiet prayers beneath their breath, standard bearers adjusting banners so the cloth unfurls in proud defiance of the morning wind. The red and gold of your lord's crest flutters above you, a fragile scrap of silk holding together the will of an army. Hours pass in this steady, relentless trudge. Your shoulders ache from the weight of supplies. Your calves burn from the unending climb up the slopes. The countryside rolls endlessly hills and woods and patches of farmland abandoned by peasants who fled long before armies came. Once you see a cottage still smoking its roof, collapsed chickens wandering wild among broken fences. Another time, you spot a line of trees hacked down, stripped bare to provide wood for siege towers you know are waiting somewhere on the horizon. War leaves nothing untouched. Mid morning, a horn call halts the column. Knights dismount, squires rush to unstrap packs, and the whole host sinks gratefully into the grass. You drop down heavily, stretching sore legs, gulping from your water skin. A cart rattles past, piled high with barrels of salted fish, the stench of brine strong enough to wrinkle your nose. An older knight nearby chuckles at your grimace. Better than nothing, lad. You'll learn to love fish when bread's gone. His words carry the weight of experience. As you chew your ration hard, bread stale but filling, you overhear whispers among the men. Scouts have returned. The enemy is closer than expected, their forces hidden in the forested ridge ahead. Some mutter that they will try and ambush, others that they will fortify the pass. Historians still argue whether medieval armies truly favored ambush tactics or whether chroniclers exaggerated them. But in this moment, the debate means little. The ridge looms dark and silent, and every man's eyes are drawn to it. When the march resumes, the pace quickens. Shields are slung higher, spears gripped tighter. Your master calls you forward. His voice is firm, though his face shows the strain of his wound. Stay close, he warns. The forest narrows the line. If they come, they'll strike fast. You nod, swallowing your fear like a stone. The sun is high when you enter the trees. Shadows close around you, cool and damp, the smell of pine and wet earth overwhelming the stench of camp. Birds scatter overhead, startled into silence. The men's armor clinks with every step, an uneasy music that seems too loud for this hushed place. You imagine unseen eyes watching from every branch, every thicket waiting. Your heart drums in your ears. Suddenly, a shout rises at the front. The line jolts to a stop. You stumble, nearly colliding with the squire ahead. Another shout, sharper, panicked. Then the sound like thunder tearing through wood, the crash of arrows striking shields. Shields up.
Your master roars, dragging you beneath his own. The sky darkens for a heartbeat as a volley of arrows hisses through the trees. Wood splinters, metal clangs, men scream. You crouch low, your shield shaking in your grasp, each impact reverberating through your bones. A man 2 paces ahead collapses a shaft, buried deep in his neck, blood spurting in a grotesque fountain. Then the charge comes. Out of the undergrowth surge men in rough armor, their faces smeared with mud axes and spears raised high. Their war cries slice the air like knives. The front ranks clash in a roar of metal, the line buckling under the sudden weight. You are shoved forward, your master pushing you to the side as he drives his sword into the first foe that rushes him. The world collapses into chaos. You swing wildly with your practice blade, meant only to parry, but desperation gives you strength. A man lunges at you with a spear. You stumble, catch the shaft on your shield, and thrust clumsily. Somehow the point finds flesh. He screams, crumpling, and the sound etches itself into your bones. You realize with horror you have killed. Your master's voice anchors you. He calls commands, cutting through the noise. Hold the line, shields together. His presence steadies those around him, his sword rising and falling with grim precision. You cling to his side, learning not from words, but from his example. The fight lasts minutes, though it feels like hours. The enemy breaks, suddenly retreating into the woods as fast as they appeared. The knights resist pursuit, wary of traps. The air reeks of blood and sweat, the ground littered with the fallen. Some groan in pain, others lie still, eyes wide in death. When it is over, you stand trembling, your shield slick with gore, your hands shaking uncontrollably. Your master grips your shoulder, his eyes locking onto yours. You lived, he says simply. That is no small thing. You try to speak, but no words come. He seems to understand.
He wipes his blade on a fallen man's tunic, sheaths it, and limps back to the road. You follow each step, heavy with the knowledge of what you've done, what you will have to do again. By dusk, the army has cleared the ridge and set camp on open ground. Fires spark across the field, men huddling close, voices hushed. The wounded are tended, their cries rising and falling like waves. You sit by the fire, your bread untouched, staring into the flames until they blur. An older squire leans close, whispering, "First kill you nod faintly." He gives a grim smile. Never forget the first, but never let it be the last. His words chill you more than the night air. Later, when the camp quiets, your master speaks again, his voice low, meant only for you. You saw today what it means to be tested. War strips you bare. It leaves only truth, your fear, your courage, your choices. Remember that. Remember what you felt. You lie awake long after the fire's glow, fading the stars cold above.
In your dreams, the man you struck falls again and again, his scream echoing. You wake with tears on your cheeks, though you do not know whether they are for him, for yourself, or for what you are becoming. This is your apprenticeship now, not in the lists of the castle yard, but here in the smoke and blood of war. And there is no turning back. The dawn creeps over the battlefield like a reluctant guest, pale and cold, as though the sun itself does not wish to rise upon what happened here yesterday. The camp stirs slowly, less from eagerness than from necessity. Men groan as they sit upright joints, stiff from sleeping on hard earth wounds, aching the echoes of screams still caught in their throats. You wake in fragments, first hearing the distant clatter of pots, then the coughs and curses of soldiers rolling from blankets, then the steady heartbeat of hammers pounding at a forge somewhere on the edge of camp. It is a morning soundtrack of survival.
Your eyes burn from too little rest. The dreams were cruel faces of the dead, returning again and again, their mouths opening to accuse you before dissolving into darkness. You rub the sleep from your eyes and force yourself upright. The cold air knifes into your lungs sharper than yesterday, though you're not sure if it is the weather or simply the weight pressing down on your chest. The truth of yesterday sits in your bones. You killed a man. And no dream, no whispered word from another squire can soften that. Still, you are expected to rise. Apprentices don't get the luxury of grief. Your master calls you with a simple bark. Up and you stumble toward him, still fastening your belt. His armor is already strapped, dented from yesterday, but burnished enough to shine faintly in the growing light. His face looks older this morning, the lines etched deeper, as if he aged 10 years overnight. He says nothing about your pallor, your bloodshot eyes. He knows. Instead, he gestures toward the rows of men assembling with shields and spears as if to remind you the world does not wait for your mourning. The order comes to move again, and the column trudges forward. Today, the air feels heavier, silence weighing upon the ranks. Yesterday's ambush has taught everyone how quickly life can collapse into chaos. The forest is left behind, but its shadows cling to you, lurking in your memory with every step. You march across rolling fields, the grass wet with dew, sparkling as though mocking the grief that fills the column. In the distance, a ruined village slouches against the horizon, its thatched roofs blackened by fire, its stone walls half collapsed. As the host approaches, scavenger dogs scatter bones clenched in their jaws. You avert your eyes, but the image brands itself onto your thoughts. War spares no hearth. Your master mutters beside you, as though reading your mind. This is what knights must walk through.
Historians still argue whether medieval knights truly accepted this destruction as divine duty or whether many simply turned blind eyes, but here in this march, it feels like an unquestionable truth, inevitable, relentless. The soldiers pause in the shell of the village, using its broken walls for cover while scouts ride ahead. You wander briefly among the ruins. The church stands crooked its bell, fallen into the weeds, half buried in mud. A child's toy, a wooden horse missing one leg, lies in the dirt abandoned. You pick it up, turn it over in your hands, and set it carefully on a ledge of stone. It feels like an act of respect, though you're not sure for whom. By midday, the army halts again. The reason soon becomes clear. On the ridge beyond lies the enemy camp banners visible in the wind tents, arrayed like chess pieces waiting for the next move. The knights gather in clusters, squires bustling around them to prepare armor sharpened swords, check straps.
The forge you heard that morning has been moved forward. Smiths hammered desperately at cracked plates and bent spearheads. The clang of metal is constant, a war drum of preparation. Your master pulls you aside. His voice is calm, but his eyes gleam with something between dread and resolve. Tomorrow will not be a skirmish. It will be a battle. You will see things you wish you hadn't. You must stand firm. You nod, though your stomach clenches so tightly, it feels like your ribs might break inward. As the sun sets, the camp transforms into a fortress of men in firelight. Shields are stacked in neat rows, spears line like teeth against the earth. Knights kneel in prayer, murmuring beneath the flicker of flames. Some clasp rosaries, others simply press their foreheads to the hilts of swords, muttering words too quiet to catch. A priest moves among them, offering blessings, his voice carrying over the crackle of fire. You're drawn into this ritual, kneeling awkwardly beside your master. You do not know the prayers by heart, but you whisper them anyway, a fumbling echo of the voices around you. Later, as the fires die down, you are sent with other apprentices to fetch water from a stream below the ridge. The night is cold, the stars cruelly bright. Your boots sink in mud each step, sucking noisily, as though the earth itself wants to drag you down. The stream gurgles softly, indifferent to the armies preparing above it. You kneel, filling skins, and for a brief moment, you allow yourself to listen to the water, to pretend that it is only a peaceful night and you are only a boy fetching water for supper. But the illusion dies as quickly as it arrives. In the distance, you hear a wolf's howl, long and mournful, echoing across the hills like a lament for what tomorrow will take. When you return to camp, you notice fires burning in the enemy's ridge as well, their glow mirroring your own. Two armies stare at one another across the dark, separated by a single valley, both waiting for dawn. You imagine the apprentices in their camp boys your age doing the same things you are, some sharpening blades, some carrying water, some trembling as they try to fall asleep. Tomorrow you will meet them with steel. Tomorrow you might kill them. The thought gnaws at you like a rat in the dark. Your master sits sharpening his sword with deliberate strokes, the rasp of stone on steel, steady, almost soothing. You sit beside him, hesitant. After a while, he speaks without looking at you. You fear tomorrow. Good. Only fools do not fear battle, but let fear sharpen you, not shatter you. He pauses, glances at you, and adds with a rare smile, "Besides, you'll be behind me. That is safer than most places." You laugh weakly, grateful for the joke, even though your insides remain knotted. As the camp quiets, you crawl into your blanket, the ground cold against your back.
Around you, snores rise and fall, broken by the occasional cough or muttered word from a dream. You stare up at the stars. They glitter with cruel beauty, as they always do before war. In that moment, you realize something stark. Tomorrow, some of these men will not see those stars again. Perhaps not your master, perhaps not you. You close your eyes, whispering a prayer of your own, making words clumsy but heartfelt, not for glory, not for honor, but simply to survive, to walk away with breath in your lungs and your master still at your side. Sleep comes fitfully jagged and restless. In your dreams, the valley below fills with smoke and screams. The ridge ahead looms larger and larger until it swallows you whole. You wake with a start, the night not yet over your heart, racing as though the battle has already begun. And so you lie in the dark, staring at the faint glow of enemy fires across the valley, waiting for a dawn that will bring more than light. It will bring a reckoning. The first whisper of dawn does not come gently. It tears the night away with a slow bleed of gray light across the horizon, revealing the valley that has been waiting in silence, patient and merciless. The fires of both camps burn low smoke, drifting lazily upward like ghosts refusing to leave the earth. A trumpet call splits the morning air, low, resonant, and final. You jolt awake, heart pounding, the echoes vibrating in your bones as though they have been struck like a bell. Today is not another march, not another patrol. Today is battle. You stumble to your feet, limbs stiff from restless sleep. Around you, men rise in waves, some moving briskly with practiced efficiency, others fumbling with straps and buckles, their hands shaking too much to fasten armor. Horses snort and paw at the ground, sensing the tension, their breaths steaming in the cold. Blackbirds circle above, already waiting for what will be left behind.
You clutch your bundle of gear and rush to your master, who sits quietly, strapping on his greaves, with movements that seem almost ritualistic, as though each buckle and knot is a prayer. He looks up briefly, his eyes sharp, despite the shadows beneath them. Eat, he commands, thrusting a hunk of bread into your hands. It is stale and tasteless, but you chew quickly, forcing it down with gulps of thin water. The food turns to stone in your stomach, weighed down by dread. Nearby soldiers pass around bits of dried meat, each eating in silence, no laughter, no songs. The air is thick, pressed down by expectation, as if even the sky itself knows it is about to be split apart. The knights begin to prepare. You run from one to another at your master's orders, tightening straps, checking shields, fetching helmets. Each task feels amplified, urgent, as though a single loose strap might tip the scales of fate. The clang of metal against metal grows louder, a storm of sharpening stones, hammer blows, and the snap of leather pulled taut. A priest moves among the men, sprinkling water, murmuring blessings. Some bow their heads devoutly, others ignore him, lost in their own thoughts. Your master kneels briefly, pressing his forehead to his sword hilt. His lips move in words too soft for you to hear. You wonder if he prays for victory, for survival, or simply for courage. When he rises, he looks taller somehow, his presence steady even as yours trembles. He notices your shaking hands as you adjust the strap of his cuirass. Without a word, he places a gauntleted hand on your shoulder and squeezes once firm and grounding. Stay with me, he says simply. The order comes, shouted through the ranks' form lines. Men scramble into position, shields, overlapping spears, bristling outward like the spines of some vast beast. Knights mount their horses, the beasts, stamping impatiently, armor creaking. You stand behind your master, clutching his spare shield, your throat dry. Across the valley, you see the enemy forming as well, their banners flapping in the wind, their lines rippling like a dark tide. They look both small and endless tiny figures, moving as one mass, a sea of iron and rage. Then the horns sound again. This time, they do not merely announce, they command. The ground shudders beneath hundreds of boots, the thud of hooves, the rumble of wagons being pulled into position. You move with the tide, swept forward until the valley yawns open before you, vast and terrifying in its emptiness. For a breathless moment, the two armies stare across the gap mirror, images locked in silence, each waiting for the other to break. The silence shatters with a scream, not a single voice, but thousands. The sound surges across the valley as the enemy charges, banners streaming behind them, weapons glinting in the rising sun. The response is immediate. The command is given, shields slam together, spears lower knights, grip reins tighter, and then your master moves his horse, lurching forward, the thunder of hooves shaking the earth. You stumble behind the world, narrowing to noise and motion. The clash comes like a storm breaking. Arrows whistle overhead, striking shields with a thud, or flesh with a sickening wet sound. The sky is alive with their hiss, darkening as volleys arc back and forth. Men scream as shafts pierce them, dropping where they stand. The first lines meet in a crash of iron and flesh, the sound deafening, 1,000 doors slamming at once. You flinch as two bodies collide. Just feet from you, one man's face caved in by a mace, the other falling beneath a spear thrust. Your master wades into the chaos like a storm given flesh. His sword flashes, striking shields, cutting through gaps in armor, his shield raised to deflect blows. You follow as best you can, clutching his spare shield, ready to hand it over if his shatters. The air is filled with dust and sweat and blood, a choking mixture that burns your lungs. The ground becomes slick beneath your boots. Patches of mud turn red with spilled life. A spear lunges towards your master's side. Without thinking, you shout a warning. He pivots just in time, the tip glancing off his armor instead of piercing through. He spares you a quick glance, a nod brief, but filled with meaning. For a heartbeat, you feel more than a boy. You feel necessary, but the battle does not pause for your pride. It presses relentless a tide that ebbs and flows. Lines break and reform shields splinter. Men stumble over bodies piled like driftwood. Trumpets sound again, orders shouted but half lost in the chaos. You hear words push, hold, advance, but they blur together, drowned in the roar of thousands locked in struggle. Time loses shape. Minutes stretch like hours. Hours collapse into heartbeats. You see flashes: a knight dragged from his horse, his armor torn open, a banner toppling into the dirt, trampled beneath boots. A boy, no older than you, lying face down, unmoving his hand, still clutching a dagger that never found its mark. You keep moving, driven not by courage, but by instinct, by the single thread that is your master's figure always ahead of you. At one point, you trip over a fallen man, your knees sinking into bloodied mud. His eyes stare upward, glassy and wide, his mouth frozen in a scream he never finished. You scramble up, bile rising in your throat, but there is no time to retch. Another horn sounds, this one closer, and the enemy surges again. Your master shouts, his voice ragged, "Hold the line." The sun climbs higher, but the day feels colder. The valley that seemed so wide at dawn is now a pit filled with smoke and bodies, the cries of the dying thickening the air. You taste iron on your tongue, whether from blood or from fear, you cannot tell. Yet through it all, you move, stumble, rise again, pulled onward by the presence of the knight who claimed you as apprentice. He is your anchor, your shield, your reason to keep standing when every muscle screams to collapse. As the afternoon bleeds on, you realize something brutal. This battle will not end quickly. It is not a clash, but a grinding, endless storm, each side pushing, breaking, reforming again and again, and you are caught in its center, a boy clutching shields and prayers, learning what it truly means to stand at the side of a knight in medieval Europe. And as the sun begins to tilt westward, staining the valley gold and red, the reckoning deepens. Victory is not yet visible. Only survival remains hour by hour, breath by breath. The sun sinks lower, and with it, the valley transforms into a furnace of dying light. Every shape seems sharpened, every color deepened: the red of blood, the black of smoke, the bronze gleam of battered armor. Shadows stretch long across the ground, swallowing the broken and the fallen. You taste the dryness in your mouth, lips cracked from shouting, throat raw from breathing smoke and dust. The air is heavy, as if the entire earth groans under the weight of men locked in battle. Your master does not falter. His horse moves steadily through the chaos hooves, pounding like a drumbeat, sword arcing with brutal rhythm. You follow as closely as you can, your arms trembling under the weight of gear, your eyes darting everywhere at once. There is no end, no pause. The world has narrowed into endless collisions, shield against spear blade, against armor life, against death. But something shifts. You notice it first in the rhythm of the horns, the way the calls ripple unevenly across your line. The men ahead are slower, their movements heavier, like a beast exhausted after too long in the hunt. The knights begin to circle their horses, restless. One rider, his helmet dented and plume torn, shouts to your master. The line bends. We cannot hold forever. Your master only grits his teeth, his jaw like stone, his eyes fixed forward. Then you see it. Across the field, the enemy's banners rise higher, their line pressing harder, their charge renewed. They have reserves, fresh men still bright with fury unbroken. Your stomach twists. You understand what this means, though you wish you did not. Your line has thinned, your nights exhausted, but the tide has not yet crested. And then the command comes, not shouted, not screamed, but carried down the line like a final breath retreat. The word rattles in your ears, terrible and undeniable. Men glance at each other, unwilling to believe it, yet desperate for release. A horn blows lower, mournful signaling the turn.
The knights wheel their horses, and the infantry begins to fall back, shields raised to cover their backs. Panic follows instantly. You feel it wash through the ranks like fire through dry straw. Order phrase. Men break from formation, running blindly, some casting shields aside to flee faster. Arrows find their spines, dropping them in mid flight. The valley echoes with chaos, shouts, screams the thunder of feet pounding away. Your master's hand seizes your arm, yanking you forward. Stay close, he roars. You stumble after him, clutching the shield so tightly your fingers ache. The line around you collapses inward, men pushing past, jostling you as they scramble to escape. Dust rises in choking clouds as the retreat churns the battlefield into mud and ash. The enemy charges harder now, smelling victory. Their cries pierce the air, shrill and wild, arrows hissing down like rain. A shaft slams into the ground, inches from your foot. Another thunks into the shield. You carry the vibration, jarring your entire arm. You barely keep your balance as you run, legs screaming, lungs burning. You glance back just once. The sight freezes you. The valley is littered with bodies, the once proud banners of your side, trampled and broken armor gleaming dully where it lies abandoned. The enemy pours forward like a flood, sweeping over the remnants, their bronze and steel flashing in the dying light. You see men cut down as they flee, hear the wet sounds of blade meeting flesh, the cries that rise, then vanish into silence. Your master yanks you again, forcing you to face forward. Do not look back, he bellows. His voice is ragged, but his grip unyielding. You obey, though the images burn behind your eyes. The retreat becomes a rout. The narrow valley funnels men together, a stampede of armor and fear. Horses crash into foot soldiers, shields, splinter men trip and are trampled under the press.
You struggle to keep your footing every stumble, nearly the end. Yet through it all, you cling to your master's presence, the one steady figure in the storm. Night begins to fall, cloaking the valley in shadow. The chaos muffles, slightly replaced by the gasping breaths of the survivors who manage to break free. Torches flicker in the distance, enemy fires claiming the ground behind you. The horn that once guided your army is silent now. Only the ragged cries of retreat echo in the dark. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, your master slows. He turns his horse, scanning the broken remains of his company. The men who gather are few, their faces pale, eyes hollow. Helmets are missing, shields, cracked spears gone. They are fragments of what stood proudly at dawn. One knight slumps in his saddle, blood soaking his surcoat, whispering a prayer through clenched teeth. Another leans on his sword, shaking his head in disbelief. No songs, no shouts, only silence broken by the occasional sob of a boy, too young to have been here at all. Your master breathes heavily, his face streaked with grimed sweat and blood that may or may not be his own. He finally looks at you. In his eyes is no triumph, but neither is there defeat, only the hardened knowledge of survival. This is the lesson, he says quietly, so softly, you almost don't hear. War is not glory. War is to endure. The words carve themselves into you deeper than any blade could. You nod, your body trembling, your mind spinning. You realize that every story you had heard as a boy of shining armor, noble battles, songs of victory was only half the truth. The other half is this mud fear retreat and the crushing weight of simply making it through alive. As the night deepens, you huddle with the survivors. Fires are lit small and careful to ward off the chill. Bread is passed around hard and tasteless, yet eaten as though it were feast.
No one speaks much. The silence is its own kind of mourning. You lie on the ground, staring up at the stars, your body aching in every bone. The constellations glitter indifferently, the same as they had the night before, untouched by the slaughter below. Sleep does not come easily, but when it does, it is heavy, filled with dreams that blur battle and memory. You wake before dawn, the cold air biting your skin, and see your master already awake, staring toward the valley. Smoke still rises there, curling upward like dark ribbons. In that moment, you understand you are not the same boy who entered this campaign. You are marked, reshaped by fire and blood. You are still an apprentice, still learning, but the lesson carved into you tonight will never leave. You have stood beside a knight in the heart of medieval Europe's brutal reality. You have seen what men do when history demands it, and somehow, though you ache with every breath, you are still standing. The knight glances at you, his expression unreadable. Then, with a faint nod, he turns back to the horizon. The world moves on indifferent, but you will carry this night forever. The fire burns low, just embers now, glowing faintly like the heartbeat of the earth. You lie close, wrapped in the faint warmth, your body heavy, your eyelids heavier still. The voices around you fade, soft murmurs of tired men drifting into silence. Even your master, so unyielding, so sharp in the chaos of battle, now sits quietly, shoulders slumped, his sword resting harmlessly at his side. The night air is cool and still. A thin mist creeps across the ground, curling around the sleeping figures, weaving through armor and cloaks, as if the earth itself is tucking you all in. Above the stars shine endlessly bright pinpricks against the dark sky, unchanging, eternal. They have seen 1,000 battles, 1,000 retreats, 1,000 young apprentices learning truths too heavy for their years.
They will shine long after these scars fade into memory. You breathe slowly, deeply, the rhythm of your chest matching the rhythm of the quiet world around you. The ground feels solid beneath your back, grounding you, steadying you. The crackle of the dying fire is like a lullaby, its warmth flickering gently against your face. Every sound grows softer now, the clink of armor as someone shifts in their sleep, the faraway call of a night bird, the whisper of the wind brushing through the trees. In this stillness, you realize survival itself is enough. You do not need to carry the weight of the world tonight. You only need to rest, to breathe, to let the night fold you into its quiet embrace. So close your eyes. Let go of the noise, the fear, the weight of what tomorrow may bring. Tonight you are safe. Tonight you are still tonight. You are here. And here is enough.